It's a truly wild feeling to be standing in line at the grocery store or maybe waiting for a train and just looking at the people around
Oh,
you.
yeah, I do that all the time.
Right. And you realize that any one of them could be living in an entirely different reality.
Completely.
Like on the outside, they're wearing the same clothes, they're checking their phones, going about their day. But internally,
Mm.
their entire operating system for, how they view the world, how they view money, relationships, even morality, it's completely alien to everything you've ever been taught.
It's the ultimate hidden in plain sight scenario, really. We just naturally assume the person next to us shares our basic foundational rules of society.
Exactly.
We assume they believe in ownership or family or, basic legal contracts, but that is not always the case.
No, it is not. And that brings us right into the fascinating document we are taking a deep dive into today. It's a translated text dated September 16th, 2021.
Right.
And it's written by an author named Sufeng. The title alone immediately grabs you. It's called Chanyuan Celestials Are Different.
It definitely sets a bold premise right out of the gate.
It really does. This text is essentially a blueprint or like a manifesto.
Yeah, manifesto is a good word for it.
Yeah, outlining this radical alternative way of living. It details the defining characteristics of a group of people known as the Chanyuan Celestials.
Right, the Celestials.
And just like we were saying, the document explicitly notes that on the outside, they look exactly like the general public.
But internally, it's a whole different story.
Fundamentally different.
Okay.
Now, before we jump into the deep end here, I do want to make our mission today crystal clear to you, the listener. We are acting strictly as impartial guides to explore the architecture of these ideas.
Exactly. We aren't here to endorse this lifestyle, and we're not here to judge it either.
Right.
We're looking at the mechanics. How does a group like this actually function day to day? What holds them together?
That's the perfect way to frame it. So let's start with the physical reality of how these celestials live. Because to understand their mindset, you really have to look at their environment.
You do. You have to look at the structure.
Yeah, and the author refers to this environment as the second home. And right away, we are hit with a massive statement. Suefeng writes that in this second home, the Celestials have personally experienced a true communist society.
Which is a heavy term.
It is. And he makes sure to point out that this is something completely unknown to the general public.
Yeah, and when we hear that term, we have to immediately separate it from the historical or political baggage it usually carries out in the broader world.
Right, we're not talking about global superpowers here.
Exactly. In the context of this specific document, it refers to a very pure, highly isolated communal living structure. We aren't talking about geopolitics at all. We're talking about microsociology. It's a completely closed ecosystem.
And the structure, or I guess the total lack of structure within that ecosystem is what really caught my attention.
Oh, it's fascinating.
The text states they operate entirely without constitutions. There are no laws, no regulations, no agreements, and no contracts. Like, literally nothing is in writing.
Wow.
There is zero legal safety net.
Which is wild to think about.
Right. Instead, they rely purely on what the author calls values to make the order of production and life ideal.
Which is a complete inversion of how the general public operates. I mean, society at large relies almost entirely on external enforcement.
We need it.
Yeah, we sign contracts so we can trust each other. We have laws so we don't harm each other.
Okay.
We essentially outsource our trust to the legal system, to courts, to police.
Right. So imagine trying to play a complex board game with a group of strangers.
Okay, yeah.
But instead of a rule book, you just rely on good vibes and shared values.
That sounds like a recipe for disaster.
Exactly. It sounds nice in theory, but inevitably someone is going to think they're allowed to move their piece 3 spaces instead of 2, and an argument breaks out.
Naturally.
So how does a society actually function day to day when you remove that entire safety net of written agreements?
Well, I see where you're going with the board game analogy, but it's a bit too innocent for what's actually happening here.
Okay, tell me more.
It's rarely just good vibes. When a closed community replaces written laws with shared values, they aren't eliminating policing.
Oh, they're not.
No, they're just changing the mechanism of it. It's more like an invisible electric fence.
Okay, an invisible electric fence. Walk me through that.
So in the general public, if you break a contract, you get sued. The punishment is financial or legal.
Right.
But in a highly communal group that relies solely on values, the enforcement comes entirely from social pressure. If you step out of line, the punishment is ostracization, gossip, or ultimately exile from the community.
Wow, so the stakes are actually huge.
Massive. It's a profound shift in trust, but it demands a utopian level of internal policing. You behave not because a cop is watching, but because everyone is watching.
Everyone is the cop.
Exactly, and your entire social survival depends on alignment with the group.
That makes a lot of sense. So the enforcement isn't gone, it's just internalized, it's socialized.
Yeah, very much so.
Which feeds right into their next major principle. The text outlines that Chanyuan celestials can achieve everything by owning nothing.
Right, the rejection of material things.
Yeah, they actively reject coveting money, power, fame, profit, or sex. They choose instead to live purely for ideals.
And this raises a crucial point about leverage.
Leverage.
Yeah, leverage. Think about it. If you own a house, a car, and a bank account, society has leverage over you.
Oh, I see. You have things to lose.
Exactly. You can be fined, you can be sued, you can have your property seized. By owning absolutely nothing, the Celestials remove all external leverage.
That's a really interesting way to look at it.
They are supposedly freed from the anxiety of losing material things, which then allows them to fully commit to the group's shared ideals. You can't threaten someone with the loss of their property if they don't have any.
It's a complete detachment from the material world. But if you don't own things, the logical next question is, how do you treat people?
Right. This is where it gets tricky.
It really does. Because this brings us to arguably the most difficult layer of detachment in this whole philosophy. The text takes this concept of owning nothing and applies it directly to the most intimate parts of human life.
Our interpersonal relationships.
Exactly. This is where the concepts usually start to challenge our fundamental biological and social instincts.
Completely. Because we are hardwired to connect.
We are. But the text states very plainly, Chanyuan celestials do not get married. They do not form families. And they do not establish a, quote, special relationship with anyone.
No special relationships at all?
None. Furthermore, they assume no responsibility or obligation for anyone, and they make zero promises to others.
It's a radical rewriting of the human social contract.
It is. And honestly, I have to push back on the emotional reality of it.
Sure.
If you have no special relationships and zero obligations to anyone, doesn't that sound incredibly isolating?
I can see why it sounds that way.
It makes me think of, like, a perpetual hostel stay.
Oh, that's a good comparison.
Right. You know when you're backpacking and you meet these amazing people in the hostel lounge, and for like 3 days, you're transient best friends.
Oh yeah, you share food, you tell stories.
Exactly. You laugh, you hang out, but then they check out and you never see them again. Everyone is your friend, but nobody is your emergency contact.
That is a great way to put it.
Without those special promised bonds, aren't you just sort of floating alone in a crowd?
It's a compelling image, the hostel stay, but we do have to nuance that just a bit.
Okay, nuance it for me.
Well, a hostel is transient by design. You leave. The stakes are incredibly low. What this text is describing, however, is permanent. It's high stakes. It's a deliberate rewiring of human attachment.
How so?
They view those special emotional contracts, like a marriage or an exclusive partnership, the exact same way they view legal contracts.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. They see them as unnecessary burdens that cause jealousy, expectation, and eventual disappointment.
So they basically view love as a finite resource that gets trapped in a marriage.
Precisely. In sociology, we look at dyads, which are two-person relationships like a marriage.
Right.
Dyads are incredibly strong bonds, and they naturally exclude the broader group. I mean, if your primary loyalty is to your spouse or your child, your primary loyalty is not to the community.
Oh, that makes total sense. You prioritize your family first.
Exactly. So by forbidding these special relationships, the group effectively breaks down those private dyadic bonds. All that emotional energy, that need for connection, it has to go somewhere.
So where does it go? Because the text says instead of pouring love onto a single person, they focus their love on the Celestial Islands continent.
Right.
Which seems to represent their broader collective or their spiritual home.
Exactly. The emotional energy is redirected upward toward the collective ideology, and the practical application of this is fascinating.
Yeah, the author explicitly notes that they share everything with each other, to the point where wherever there are 3 Chanyuan celestials, there is a home.
That's a wild metric, isn't it?
It's crazy. Just add 3 celestials together, and boom, instant home.
Because the friction of exclusivity is totally gone. If you don't own anything and you aren't jealously guarding a specific partner or a private family unit, you become incredibly adaptable.
Right.
People essentially become interchangeable parts in a frictionless machine. That perpetual hostel you mentioned doesn't feel lonely if the ideology demands that every single person in the room is an equally valid, deeply trusted part of your universal family.
Okay, I see the internal logic there.
Mm,
I mean, it requires a total restructuring of human attachment to make sure the group is the only thing that matters, but it is logical within their framework.
it is, very much so.
So if they have no earthly possessions, and they have no exclusive human ties to anchor them what drives their daily actions.
Right, what's the motivation?
Exactly. How do they navigate the world morally and geographically?
This is where we really see the concept of living purely for ideals put into daily practice.
Right. And Suofeng lays out some behavioral baselines. They don't compete with others, they don't argue, they don't squabble.
Well, very harmonious.
Yeah, but then the document drops this incredibly deep philosophical concept. It says, Chanyuan celestials do not do good or bad things.
That's a huge shift.
It's massive. Instead, they only do angelic things, according to the way of nature. In fact, it explicitly says they're not good people and they're not bad people. They're simply angels.
They're stepping completely outside the traditional moral binary.
Yes, they're stepping off the moral seesaw entirely, which is a really tricky concept to wrap your head around.
Oh, for sure.
Because if you aren't doing good things and you aren't doing bad things, what does an angelic act actually look like in practice?
Well, think about the natural world. If we connect this back to the way of nature that the document mentions, does a river do a good thing when it waters a valley?
No.
Or does it do a bad thing when it floods a town?
No, it just flows. It
Yeah.
just acts according to its nature as water.
Exactly. By detaching from human constructs of morality, the Celestials are aiming for a state of pure flow. Remember, good and bad are often defined by the very laws and property contracts we were just talking about in the beginning.
Oh, that's true?
Right. Like, if you steal my car, society says that is bad. But if there is no property, the concept of stealing vanishes entirely.
Right.
By aiming to be angels acting in accordance with nature, they're seeking absolute adaptability, totally unburdened by societal judgments.
You know, if you're listening to this right now and thinking, okay, a group with no external laws, no exclusive relationships, and a completely redefined sense of morality, this is sounding heavily like a high-control group or a cult.
It's a very common thought.
And honestly, from an objective sociological standpoint, the structural mechanics are very similar. They are systematically removing every single anchor a person has to the outside world.
That's a very fair observation to make as an objective guide. The mechanics of isolation, both physical and psychological, they're definitely present in the text.
And it extends to their geography, too, because this pure flow applies to where they live as well. The text notes, they have no country in their heart. They don't love their country, and they certainly don't dedicate themselves to it. To a celestial, home is simply wherever they can live and work freely.
Which is the ultimate expression of that adaptability we were just talking about. Patriotism, borders, national identity, these are all external human constructs.
Right, they're man-made.
They are just invisible lines drawn on a map by governments. To someone aiming to live purely by the way of nature, those lines are meaningless.
The author even writes that they have no fixed location and no travel plans. They associate with others by following predestined relations, and they just take advantage of opportunities as they arise.
Literally blowing in the wind.
Naturally.
But we have to ask ourselves, is it truly just blowing in the wind?
What do you mean?
Well, it requires a profound surrender of personal agency. The general public plans, strategizes, and fights against the current of nature to build fixed structures and permanent lives.
Right, we try to control things.
Exactly. The Celestials are taught to just float on the current. But in a highly structured group, that current is usually directed by the group's ideology.
Which brings us to the biggest question of all. All of this radical detachment. You know, abandoning laws, owning nothing, letting go of family, erasing borders, ignoring the concepts of good and bad, it begs a massive question.
What's the point?
Exactly. What is the payoff? What is the end goal for living this incredibly ascetic, detached life? And that brings us to their views on the future and the end of life.
This is really the anchor for everything we've discussed today, the ultimate justification for the lifestyle.
It has to be.
Yeah.
Because Shufeng draws a very sharp contrast here. The document states that the general public, all other living beings, are basically confused.
Right.
But the Celestials know exactly what they're doing. They know exactly where they're heading, and they know the end results. They have firm confidence in something called the thousand-year world of the heavenly kingdom.
And this isn't framed as just blind faith for them, which is key. The text emphasizes that they know it really exists based on their experience in that second home we discussed earlier.
Oh, right.
Yeah, that isolated communal environment serves as a proof of concept. It's like a taste of the heavenly destination right here on Earth.
And because of this certainty, the text says they face mortality entirely differently. They welcome death with a smile.
Which is a powerful image.
It is. But here is the detail that completely reframes the entire document for me. The text says they have a tour guide to lead the way. And it smugly asks, does the general public have this?
It's a very revealing choice of words.
It really is.
I mean, a tour guide implies a known, carefully curated path.
Right. And that is exactly what I want to push back on. Because up until this exact moment in the text, everything has been about total freedom.
Pure flow.
Yes. No rules, no contracts, no plans, no obligations, just floating purely on the way of nature like a river. And then suddenly, boom, a tour guide is introduced.
It shifts the dynamic entirely.
It does. That implies a highly structured, deliberately guided journey.
You're picking up on the central tension of the text right there. The tour guide isn't just a metaphor. When you look at the sociology of groups like this, the tour guide is almost certainly a euphemism for a charismatic leader.
Like Su Feng himself.
Very likely the author, Su Feng himself, yes.
So the total freedom is actually just total submission to the guide.
Exactly. It's the psychological linchpin of the whole operation.
Wow.
For the Celestials, the radical freedom from society's rules in this life is only possible because they've entirely surrendered their agency to this guide for the next life.
That makes so much sense.
The radical lifestyle choices, giving up your family, your property, your career plans, they aren't just for the sake of being contrarian. They are entirely predicated on the absolute belief in this heavenly kingdom and absolute trust in the person guiding them there.
I guess if you genuinely believe, with zero doubt, that a literal 1,000-year paradise awaits you, and you have the one reliable tour guide to take you there, then suddenly owning a house, or arguing over a legal contract, or clinging to a specific relationship, it all seems incredibly trivial.
It would be like arguing over who gets the best seat in the waiting room when your flight to paradise is already boarding.
That's a great analogy.
The document concludes by stating simply that different groups of people have different destinations. Their destination is the heavenly kingdom.
Right.
Therefore, their behavior on the journey looks entirely different from the general public, whose destination, in the eyes of the author anyway, is confused and chaotic.
So let's take a step back and just look at the whole picture here. This text paints a vivid picture of a group that systematically strips away every traditional pillar of human society.
Every single one.
They remove laws and external enforcement, replacing them with intense social pressure and shared values. They eliminate personal ownership to remove leverage. They dissolve exclusive love, marriage, and family obligations to ensure absolute loyalty to the collective. They step outside the moral binary of good and bad, and they erase national borders from their minds.
And in the void left behind by all those societal pillars, they substitute universal sharing, the flow of nature, and an unshakable, smiling certainty in a guided path to a heavenly kingdom.
It's a profound trade-off.
It really is. You give up individual agency and personal bonds in exchange for total certainty and a friction-free community.
It's a drastically different way to view human existence. And whether you find that level of communal living fascinating or deeply concerning, it certainly forces you to examine the invisible rules we all live by every single day.
It absolutely does.
Which brings me to the thought I want to leave you with today. The text argues that Chanyuan Celestials can achieve everything by owning nothing and committing to no one. But I want you to ask yourself, if you removed every single obligation, every legal contract, and every exclusive, messy, beautiful relationship from your life today, would you feel totally free, or would you feel completely lost?
That is a phenomenal question to ponder.
It's going to keep me up tonight, that's for sure. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the world around you, keep exploring those hidden realities, and we'll catch you on the next one.